So let's finish up this series by looking at tendons. On top of the ligaments and muscles in your joint are tendons. Tendons are like ligaments and are a fibril connective tissue, but a tendon connects muscle to bone. They anchor the muscles and stabilize them to the bone. Like ligaments, they have very, very little elastin in them, which means that unlike muscle itself, it doesn't have capacity to stretch. It can be torn or overstretched. You can get these little micro tears in the tendons from overstretch. But also in very bad instances, they can be torn away from the bone. They can actually detach. And then you can have repetitive motions that can irritate the tendons and they can become inflamed, which gets called tendinitis. Again, like your ligaments, there's very little blood supply to the tendons, so they are slow to heal. A classic yoga irritation is the tendon at the top of the hamstrings. So this is where your hamstrings insert to the ischial tuberosity, those bony protrusions at the base of your pelvis that we call the sitting bones. So if people overstretch, then they're not just stretching their hamstrings, but they're tugging at that tendon insertion of the hamstrings to the ischial tuberosity. They can just have that niggling sensation there, or in a sudden accident, a bad tear, or it could even detach from the bone. So like I tore my hamstring very quickly playing in goal, playing hockey. You know, that sudden impact, or just this niggling sensation of always overstretching it in yoga. So you want to focus your stretches in the belly of the muscle, not stretch to your absolute nth degree. And if you feel sensation near a joint, back off. One of my other bugbears is when people pull the flesh of their buttocks out before a hamstring stretch. You have that flesh there over your sitting bones for a reason. So when you pull that flesh out, you're making more contact of the tendon against the floor. You're exposing that insertion point of the tendon against the ischial tuberosity and then stretching there. So just keep your buttocks under you when you stretch. Random side note that was. So what is important to bear in mind when you're looking at joints is that no human is the same. We are very different on the outside, we can see that, and we also differ greatly on the inside, including the physical structures of our joints, the shapes of our bones and how they articulate together. So we don't all move the same, let alone look the same. And this plays a big role in each individual student's joint stability and range of movement. Clearly, as a teacher, you can't see inside your students and see their bony structures, but you need to recognize there are big variants from person to person. Every student's range of movement is different, and flexibility is different, and poses need to look different from one person to the other. So it's much more important to think about how a yoga pose feels versus how a yoga pose looks. Now, on this same topic, there was just one other thing I wanted to cover, which is hypermobility and hyperextension. So you can see this knee bowing back on itself here in hyperextension, and this hypermobility here, these deep, deep back bends. So hypermobility is what often people call being double jointed. And it's actually got nothing to do with your muscles or how flexible you are. It is excessive mobility in the joint, often due to looser connective tissue and higher levels of collagen affecting the ligaments, tendons, and joint capsules. So you're actually made up slightly different. And this can lead to instability, joint pain and stiffness, poor balance, dislocations and sprains. So when you see this excessive hypermobility in yoga or hyperextension, you might see it in someone's knees, in their elbow, in how they're arching in the lower back. You want to encourage those students to back off, to not push into their flexibility. but to focus on more stability. So backing off from their full range of movement, focusing on strength and stability, and retraining those neurological pathways and proprioception so they know what is straight and when they've hyperextended. So they know what bent is, straight, and hyperextended. We want to encourage all our students to move their joints. Moving joints increases lubrication, increases the intake of nutrients, and helps support our joints through life. Now, a lot of people often just think about feeling yoga in their muscles. Do I feel a stretch? It's really important that we're looking at moving in our joints as well. Helps keep them healthy and helps them to regenerate and heal. We want to stabilize joints in movement, especially stretches and under heavy loads. You want to encourage people to stay within their optimal range of movement and not over-glorify stretching deeply and advanced yoga flexibility. So I hope this overview of joints within yoga was useful for you. Any questions, do just let me know anytime. Thank you. Namaste.